But I remember in your book, though, you indicated that you wanted to tell somebody and that you brought it to their attention, and I'm not sure what the confusion was, and you were hoping that it would be brought up at a later point, but it never came up again. Now that's important if there are educators that are listening. So did you try to approach someone?
Yes, I did, and I think that a lot of children want to tell, you know, and I did. I feel like I hinted so many times in my life. I was scared to death to actually come out and say it because I didn't know what words to use. But I wanted people to know that something was going on. But I will say, right when that video ended, I went to my teacher before we even went back to our classroom, and I said, I really want to tell you something, but I'm afraid to tell you right now. I'm going to write about it in my journal because we had journal time every week. Well, once journal time came around, I was too afraid. I was afraid that I would be ripped apart from my mom. I would never see her again. You know, all these things that he told me, no one would believe me anyway. So I was afraid to tell, and so I didn't. But I thought in my mind, it was pretty obvious what I wanted to say to her.
Yes.
If it really matters, she'll ask me.
Yes.
But she never did.
Well, I hope that if there are any educators that are watching this, that they hear that. I'm in that field, and that would certainly alert me.
Yeah.
And so if there are educators out there that are listening to this and hear that, please take that seriously. And even if you're uncomfortable with that, maybe you could go to someone else in the building, whether it's a counselor or a social worker, some type of a support service person who could help you to approach the child and work through this. I think that's very important. So nothing, you were 12 years old when that?
I was in 5th grade, so I was only about 10.
10 years old. Okay, so you're saying that this person is supposed to be this respected person in the community, someone that loves you, someone that you trust, but in this case, that wasn't true.
Right, you know, and though that, I think that is also part of what was so hard for me to tell, because he wasn't this horrible man all the time. I think if he was that monster, I could have told easier. I would have ran to my mom, but I thought that my mom had a good marriage. I felt that she loved my stepfather. I didn't want to ruin her marriage. I also saw my stepfather as two different people in my life. You know, he wasn't just horrible all the time. He was like a dad to me. I mean, he was my biggest sports fan. He was so supportive of me growing up. I felt that I could talk to him about anything. You know, so it kind of came in spurts. You know, sometimes it would happen for 2 weeks. There's awful, horrible things he would do to me. But then 6-8 months would go by and he would be a really great father. And it's almost like, you know, I almost pushed the bad out because I wanted so bad for him just to be that good dad to me. And I didn't want to lose that part of him. And I was scared to death of, if my mom did believe me, you know, that I would ruin her marriage and that I would lose this father figure. So it's very confusing as a child. Because if it is this stranger that we stereotypically believe it is, that's easier for a child to tell.
But now during that 6th or 8th month period when he was being a great dad, was he also being abusive?
Not always.
Okay. So wow. So how did this start? How far back can you recollect?
My earliest memory was about 5 years old. My stepfather married my mom when I was 3. So I don't know if I don't remember back that far, or maybe it took him a couple years to groom me into this situation. I'm not sure. But
okay, so grooming is that's a pretty important word. And so talk about what grooming is.
Grooming is basically how an abuser gains the trust of the child. And, you know, I loved him as a father figure, and I think that that's part of the grooming, that I had this trust in him, this I believed him, and he told me that he was teaching me. These are grooming. For instance, he showed me pornographic videos, and that is grooming, because in that he would say, this is what adults do. I'm teaching you. You know, you're growing up. This is what a good dad does.
What did you feel when he was doing that, showing you those movies and making those statements?
I felt very confused because I felt like it was dirty. I felt like it was wrong. I hated it. But at the same time, I enjoyed the attention that I got from him. And there were times when I would pull away from him in certain abusive situations, and he wouldn't talk to me for days. And I really struggled with the shame of that growing up, because I thought back in those times, you know, well, maybe I wanted the attention that I got from him. I wanted him to be that dad. I wanted his attention. I wanted his affection. And even harder than that, and this is something I wasn't able to talk about for many years, the feeling. So many people struggle with this, and that's why I wanted to be able to speak it, because I know there are a lot of listeners today who probably are dealing with this. But I came to the realization that, you know, God made our bodies to respond to touch. It just wasn't supposed to happen when I was 8 years old by my stepfather. So it wasn't me. It wasn't my body that was betraying me. It was my stepfather. And to be able to put the blame on him, he's the one that chose to do this, you know, not me. I always thought, you know, if my body responded to that kind of touch, I must be the most horrible, disgusting person on this planet. But when I was able to replace that with the knowledge that, no, God made my body like this, it did what it was supposed to do, brought so much freedom to me. And to be able to place the blame where it belonged, on my stepfather, not myself. And for people who are listening today, I hope that would be freedom for you as well, because I know how freeing it was for me. Because if you were abused as a child, it was not your fault.
Yes. But something really important that you're saying, too, is that you felt that something wasn't right. And that's pretty profound in and of itself. And I think that sends a message that if you feel that it isn't right, then it probably isn't.
You're right. Yeah.
And I hope that those who are listening are kind of picking up on that. So as a child, even as a child, without having all this comprehension of sexuality, you still felt that something wasn't right. And I think that's very important. I'm just thinking too of my own daughters when they were growing up. I remember telling them, because you made the statement, I wish I had some knowledge. Like, even though it felt wrong inside, because God made us also, and like you're saying, I was responding to touch, but at the same time, God also gave us this sensing, even as children, this sensing and perceiving. And I remember saying to my children when they were very, very young, never, ever, ever let anyone touch you and in your private parts. And I would talk to them about that and explain that, to the point where I remember one of my daughters, somebody was helping her in the bathroom and touched her. I mean, not that they were purposely doing it, and she screamed, no, you can't touch me. So that's very important.
Yeah.
That if somebody might have said, don't let anyone ever touch your private parts. But then it started when you were 5 years old.
Right, and that's what's so frustrating to me, is that, parents really aren't talking to their kids about these things. And so then it's kind of up to the school or the church.
Yes.
And schools and churches are too afraid to talk about it that early. The earliest that I've been able to go into a school is 5th grade. And the earliest that came into my school when I was little was 5th grade. Well, by that time, so many kids have already gone through, for me, 5 years of it by that point.
Yeah.
So we've got to talk to kids earlier, and we need to empower parents to have the knowledge and the tools to be able to speak to their children, letting them know that, they shouldn't keep secrets, and that there's never something that should be kept from a parent, and that they have a right to their bodies.
Yes.
I mean, so many times I think that I hear stories about, they tell their children to, kiss Uncle Bob goodbye, like you have to, or sit on Grandpa's lap and let him read you a story. What if the child doesn't want to, and they still make them? Like, give them a right to their body to say no to uncomfortable situations. And if they do say no to giving Uncle Bob a kiss goodbye, ask them later why. Because hopefully it was nothing. But what if it was something? Give your child the opportunity to share with you.
Yes. Now, and the other thing, when you're talking about 5th grade, grooming probably has to start much earlier, because by 5th grade or 6th grade, whatever, that young person may already have a little bit more power, or a little bit more know-how to say no or run to mom, or and so the grooming probably has to start really early.
Yeah, definitely.
So what are some of the other components of the grooming? You talked about trying to gain trust. So what are some of the components of grooming?
I think a lot of it is just, saying that it's a teaching technique. Another thing that I hear a lot is, gift giving.